It started with a simple tweet. At 6:03 a.m. on a Monday, former President Donald J. Trump posted a statement that would light up every newsroom in the country. The tweet wasn't angry. It wasn't his usual name-calling or fiery rhetoric. It was calculated. Surgical. And it included documents. I've stayed quiet long enough. But now it's time Americans see the truth. AOC's past isn't what it seems. #exposed. Attached were 4 PDFs, redacted, but not enough to hide the implications. Within hours, conservative pundits ran with it. By noon, even left-leaning outlets couldn't ignore it. Cable networks looped the same image, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, walking into a committee hearing in a navy blue blazer and heels, expression tight, phone in hand, lips sealed. The contents of the leak weren't confirmed yet. But the headlines already ran wild. Trump drops congressional bombshell, AOC in crisis mode after Trump revelation, political career in freefall. What made it worse? Trump wasn't gloating. He was quiet. Deadly quiet. And when he finally did speak at a press conference later that day, he only said one thing: she shouldn't be anywhere near federal office. And soon, she won't be. AOC's team scrambled. They tried to discredit the documents. Claimed forgery. Accused the former president of targeting her. But behind the scenes, something was unraveling fast. The documents Trump had posted weren't just noise. Buried in the third PDF, dated 4 years earlier, was a confidential internal memo from the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Marked for internal use only, it outlined a controversial strategy, one that involved leveraging certain nonprofits to funnel influence into congressional votes through what the memo called external grassroots pressure with internal payoff mechanisms. In plain English, vote manipulation cloaked as public activism. AOC's name was mentioned multiple times, not directly as the architect, but as a strategic mouthpiece with maximum media reach. One chilling line stood out: Representative Ocasio-Cortez has shown remarkable ability to galvanize public narrative while we shift legislative levers behind the scenes. By the next morning, the memo was everywhere. Cable news brought on former staffers, whistleblowers, and ethics experts. The question wasn't if the memo was real, it was who leaked it, and how deep the operation went. AOC's team held a press conference in front of the Capitol steps. She stood between her chief of staff and legal counsel, speaking with calm defiance. This is a smear campaign orchestrated by someone with a personal vendetta against progress in this country. I did nothing wrong. Nothing unethical. But the memo wasn't the only problem. Because right after the press conference, a second wave hit. A high-ranking congressional aide from another office came forward, and she wasn't anonymous. Her name was Camille Durand, and she had receipts. Camille Durand had worked on the Hill for over a decade. A senior legislative advisor with no known political allegiance, she had built a reputation for integrity, the kind of staffer who stayed late, took no sides, and kept her name out of the headlines. Until now. She stepped in front of the cameras at a hastily arranged presser on the steps of the Dirksen Senate office building, clutching a manila folder. Her voice didn't tremble. I was there when that memo was drafted. I saw who approved it. I saw who added the names. And I saw who signed off. Reporters swarmed. Are you saying Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez had direct knowledge? Camille cut them off. Yes. She wasn't just a participant. She was briefed, regularly. I sat in 2 of those meetings. The folder she held was full of meeting logs, email chains, calendar invites, all cross-referenced with internal caucus agendas. The dates aligned perfectly with AOC's public statements and votes from that period. One email, dated just before a key housing bill passed, was especially damning. From AOC at House.gov to Caucus Strategy Group at SecureMail.cc subject, leveraging momentum, got it. I'll hit the media circuit tomorrow. Let me know when the pressure call goes out to our people. The phrase, "our people," began trending within minutes. Suddenly, it wasn't just a leak. It was a potential congressional ethics violation, or worse. The House Ethics Committee, under mounting pressure, announced it would be reviewing the matter with urgency. Trump, still publicly silent, issued only a single Truth Social repost, TikTok. Inside AOC's DC office, the mood had shifted from denial to full-blown panic. Staffers were seen removing boxes. Aides were instructed to wipe devices and prepare talking points. 2 senior communications directors quietly resigned, no public statements, just polite, personal decision emails that didn't fool anyone. The Hill was buzzing with rumors, subpoenas, committee votes, even quiet whispers of a resignation deal being floated behind closed doors. Meanwhile, Representative Ocasio-Cortez was no longer making public appearances. Her social media accounts went dark. Her last post, a vague quote about "truth always prevailing," had been dissected by every political analyst in the country. Then came the internal audio leak. A recording, clearly made on someone's phone, was sent anonymously to 3 major news outlets. In it, AOC could be heard speaking during what sounded like a private strategy call. "This is coordinated. They're going after me because I'm effective. But if they think I'm going to fall on the sword for the whole caucus, they're wrong. If I go down, I'm not going alone." The implications were nuclear. Not only did it confirm her awareness, it suggested leverage. Retaliation. Several progressive members distanced themselves almost immediately. By Friday, editorial pages, even left-leaning ones, began to shift tone. It's no longer a question of whether Representative Ocasio-Cortez survives this scandal. It's whether she'll take others with her on the way down. And Trump? He hadn't said another word publicly. But late that night, he was spotted entering a closed-door meeting at Mar-a-Lago. The guest list? Several GOP strategists, 2 former federal prosecutors, and 1 man who hadn't been seen in D.C. circles for years, but used to specialize in dismantling campaigns brick by brick. The hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m., but by 7:30, the line outside the Rayburn House office building stretched around the block. Reporters, staffers, and curious onlookers gathered, eager to witness what many dubbed the political reckoning of the decade. Inside, the House Ethics Committee chamber buzzed with anticipation. The room, typically reserved for procedural matters, was now the epicenter of a political maelstrom. Cameras from every major network were set up, their red lights blinking in readiness. At precisely 9 o'clock, the committee chair called the session to order. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez entered, flanked by her legal team. She wore a navy suit, her expression stoic, betraying little of the turmoil that had engulfed her office in recent weeks. Politico. The chair began. This committee convenes to address allegations concerning Representative Ocasio-Cortez's involvement in activities that may constitute ethical violations. The proceedings commenced with the presentation of evidence, emails, internal memos, and testimonies from former staffers. Each piece painted a picture of a coordinated effort to leverage nonprofit organizations for political gain, blurring the lines between advocacy and manipulation. A particularly damning moment came when an audio recording was played, capturing AOC in a private meeting. "If they think I'm going down alone, they're mistaken. This isn't just about me." Gasps echoed in the chamber. The implication was clear: others were involved, and she was prepared to expose them. Throughout the hearing, AOC maintained her composure, occasionally conferring with her attorneys. When given the opportunity to speak, she addressed the committee: "I stand by my record and my commitment to the people I serve. I will cooperate fully with this investigation and trust in the process to reveal the truth." The session adjourned with the committee announcing that deliberations would continue in the coming days. No immediate decisions were made, but the weight of the evidence presented left a palpable tension in the air. Outside, as AOC exited the building, reporters shouted questions, but she offered no comments, disappearing into a waiting vehicle. The nation watched, waiting for the next development in a saga that had captivated the political landscape. The hearing may have ended for the day, but the political aftershocks were just beginning. By that evening, 3 prominent members of the Progressive Caucus issued a joint statement, carefully worded, but unmistakable in its distance: "We believe in due process and ethical transparency. At this time, we are reassessing our internal leadership and affiliations to ensure alignment with our core values." In plain terms, they were pulling away from AOC. Social media exploded. The hashtag Progressive Purge trended alongside hashtag AOC Exposed and hashtag House Under Fire. For the first time since her meteoric rise, AOC was no longer seen as untouchable. Donors withdrew. Endorsements froze. A high-profile environmental group pulled her from a speaking event in Seattle. Her press secretary resigned. But behind the scenes, something even more dangerous was brewing. Members of the House Ethics Committee reportedly received anonymous envelopes, each containing new documents tied to other representatives, some of them powerful allies of AOC. The message was clear: if she was going down, she had the receipts to take others with her. Meanwhile, Trump capitalized on the moment. At a rally in Pennsylvania, he took the stage to thunderous applause and dropped a line that echoed across every outlet: "AOC built her career on false hope and real corruption. Now, the spotlight's on her, and I say we keep it there until the whole machine gets torn down." The crowd roared. Chants of "lock her up" rang out, not for Hillary this time, but for a new target. The fracture lines were deepening. Within days, a faction of Democrats quietly met to discuss a backup candidate for AOC's congressional seat, just in case. It was just past midnight when the call came in. AOC was in her apartment, pacing, phone in one hand, espresso in the other. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours in days. When her chief of staff called, she expected more bad news. Instead, it was a request, urgent, and unexpected. "The White House wants to speak. Not press, not staff. Direct line." At first, she thought it was a joke. But 30 minutes later, the screen flashed: "Private, Executive Office of the President." It wasn't Biden on the line, it was the Chief of Staff. "Congresswoman, we're monitoring the situation very closely. The President wants you to know this isn't just about ethics. It's about optics. If this spirals out of control, it risks damaging the entire legislative agenda. Translation: you're becoming a liability." The message was calm, almost rehearsed. They weren't asking her to step down, not yet. But the pressure was unmistakable. It wasn't just Republicans circling now. Her own party had started calculating survival. "The President is advising restraint. No public escalation. Let the process work. And consider, seriously consider, what's best for the movement." It felt like a warning. A velvet-gloved push toward the exit. AOC didn't respond right away. She just stared out the window at the Capitol dome glowing in the distance. The call ended with a final sentence that chilled her more than anything else: "You've made history, Congresswoman. Don't let it end like this." The next morning, AOC canceled all public appearances. Her team was silent. The usual flood of progressive firebrand posts never came. Then came the leak. An anonymous insider claimed she was being offered a quiet exit package: "Step aside now, avoid formal censure, and preserve future viability in other political avenues." But the real question was, would she take it? Because across town, Trump had already called for something very different. While AOC was fielding quiet exit deals behind closed doors, Trump was preparing a very public endgame. At a press conference held in front of the newly renovated Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C., he stood flanked by a team of legal advisors and conservative House members. Reporters expected a victory lap, but what they got was a strategic escalation. "I don't want her to resign," Trump said calmly, looking straight into the cameras. "I want her removed. And I want it done by the books." The room exploded with questions. What did he mean by removed? Was he talking about expulsion? Indictment? He clarified, I am formally calling on the House of Representatives to initiate proceedings to expel Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez based on the evidence presented, evidence the American people have now seen for themselves. He then produced a thick binder, raising it slightly. This isn't just a scandal, it's a breach of trust. It's coordination with outside influence groups, violation of campaign finance laws, and possibly obstruction. And if Congress won't act, I guarantee the voters will. That binder was already being shared with House leadership, he claimed, and several Republican representatives co-signed the demand for a full vote. Later that afternoon, Representative Byron Daniels introduced a resolution, House Resolution 774, calling for an ethics vote on expulsion, pending findings of unlawful conduct and breach of congressional standards. Even centrist Democrats were uncomfortable now. They didn't like Trump's tactics, but they couldn't ignore the optics, and the midterms were just around the corner. Behind closed doors, the DNC was in meltdown. One strategist reportedly muttered, "He's not just trying to beat her, he's trying to erase her." Meanwhile, AOC's silence only fueled the fire. Calls for a statement were met with deafening quiet. But she wasn't hiding. She was preparing for something. Because on the morning of the scheduled vote, she arrived at the Capitol with a leather folder under her arm, and a cold, steady fire in her eyes. The House chamber was at full capacity. Cameras lined the upper galleries. Members sat stiffly in their seats, anticipating a vote that could make history, the expulsion of a sitting congresswoman on ethics charges. Security was tight. Whispers bounced from row to row. Then, the double doors opened. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez stepped in. Gone was the defiant activist energy. She walked with deliberate control, not rattled, not beaten, but focused. In one hand was a small leather folder. In the other, nothing. She requested to speak before the floor vote. The speaker hesitated, then granted the motion. The room quieted as she approached the microphone. Members of Congress. Colleagues. Opponents. Let me speak clearly, not just as a representative, but as a citizen of this country. She paused. What has happened over the last 10 days has been more than a political storm. It's been a coordinated effort, not just to remove me, but to silence what I represent. She opened the folder. Inside were copies of internal correspondence, not from her office, but from PACs, lobbying groups, and even committee members from both sides of the aisle. If I'm guilty of proximity to power, then this entire chamber is complicit. And you know it. Gasps. Audible shifts in posture. She didn't stop there. You want ethics? Let's open the books on campaign donations, on backdoor deals with corporations, on the revolving door between this chamber and lobbying firms. You want transparency? Then let's go all the way. I will not resign. I will not fold. And if you're going to vote me out, make sure you're ready to explain why you stayed silent when the same playbook was used by others. Thunderous silence. No applause. Just impact. She stepped away, left the folder on the podium, and returned to her seat. Some members glanced nervously at one another. A few aides rushed to grab the folder. And just before the speaker called for order, a Republican from Texas, once a vocal critic, whispered to a colleague, "We might have just lit a match we can't put out." The speaker brought down the gavel. The House will now proceed with the vote on Resolution 774. You could feel it, the tension wasn't political anymore. It was personal. Every representative knew that today's vote wasn't just about Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It was about where each of them stood if the microscope ever turned their way. One by one, the names were called. Representative Adams, aye. Representative Bishop, nay. Representative Clark, aye. Representative DeSantis, aye. Representative Evans, nay. It was a mix. Predictable in parts, surprising in others. A few moderates who had previously criticized AOC hesitated, some even changed their votes mid-call. Then came the count. The chamber held its breath as the tally was read aloud. Ayes, 215 nays, 210 present, 5. The room paused. That was close, razor thin. But it wasn't enough. Under House rules, an expulsion requires a 2/3 majority. Trump had pushed for a knockout. He got a bruise. The resolution failed. The speaker pounded the gavel. There was no applause. No one cheered. Instead, there was a cold, unsettled quiet, like something just broke under the surface. Cameras turned immediately toward AOC. She stood. No smile. No smugness. Just a firm nod before she turned and left the chamber. Her team followed, stone-faced, but not defeated. The fallout began immediately. Several PACs that had backed the resolution were now being questioned by watchdog groups. Ethics complaints, now bipartisan, started landing in inboxes across Capitol Hill. Trump released a statement minutes later: corruption wins another round, but not the fight. Stay tuned. But inside the Beltway, insiders whispered a different takeaway. AOC hadn't been destroyed. She'd been reborn. Not as a rising star, but as a lightning rod. And no matter which side you were on, it was now clear, her career wasn't over. It had just been redefined. The morning after the failed vote, Washington was eerily quiet. Cable networks recycled the same headline with a mix of disbelief and grudging awe: she survived. AOC beats the vote and turns the table. Trump's knockout attempt misses. Barely. But behind the scenes, the storm hadn't passed. It had just shifted course. Multiple committee chairs were now facing pressure, not from voters, but from watchdog groups and investigative journalists emboldened by the folder AOC had left behind. Several members named in those leaked documents were quietly lawyering up. The Speaker's office issued a statement calling for a new era of transparency and accountability, a diplomatic attempt to calm the public after what many viewed as the most public near-political execution since Watergate. As for Trump, he held a rally that night in Georgia. I gave them the ammo. They couldn't pull the trigger. His supporters cheered, but even among his inner circle, frustration simmered. He wanted her gone. And now she was bigger than ever: headlines, interviews, podcasts, and even invitations to international forums. She was still bruised, politically and publicly, but no longer underestimated. Then came the twist. 3 days after the vote, AOC made a surprise appearance on 60 Minutes. The interview was sharp, raw, and loaded. She dropped one sentence that changed the entire trajectory: "They came after my seat, now I'm looking at the Senate." The host blinked. "You mean, yes. I'm considering it. I won't confirm anything yet, but I've learned something over the past few weeks. I've been playing defense. That ends now." Suddenly, the battle wasn't over her district. It was about her next move, and the threat she now posed nationally. Trump's allies began circulating a new internal memo: if she's not stopped, she'll own the next generation. The 60 Minutes interview sent shockwaves across every political war room in the country. Within 1 hour, AOC's campaign donation page crashed from traffic overload. By midnight, it was confirmed: $4.8 million raised in less than 24 hours. From grassroots donors. Small amounts. But tens of thousands of them. The DNC, which had distanced itself just days earlier, suddenly found itself in a dilemma. Behind closed doors, senior strategists debated whether to embrace her comeback or fear her insurgency. If she runs for Senate, one strategist admitted, we either help her, or she builds a new machine without us. Meanwhile, Trump's team scrambled to counter. PACs aligned with him launched ad campaigns in swing states, painting AOC as the radical phoenix rising from the flames of corruption. But even conservative outlets were now split. Some commentators warned, she's more dangerous now than ever, not because of what she did, but because she survived it. On Capitol Hill, more than a few House members began to avoid cameras. Several quietly returned campaign donations that were linked to the PACs named in the original scandal. And then came the photo, one that would define the next phase of the political war. It showed AOC, standing alone on the Capitol steps at sunset, in a black trench coat, folders in hand. The caption on her post read, "I don't want revenge. I want reform. But if you come for me again, bring something stronger." It went viral instantly. Within a week, she was being invited to headline major events, including one called the New Left Summit, hosted in California, backed by tech billionaires, and drawing international press. One headline captured the shift perfectly: Trump tried to end her career. Instead, he lit the fuse. The rumors became headlines within days. AOC was eyeing a Senate run, not in New York, but in Florida. At first, no one took it seriously. Why would a Bronx-born progressive try to flip one of the most conservative strongholds in the country? But then came the numbers. Private polling leaked from two Democratic data firms showed a shocking statistic: among voters under 40 in key Florida metros, Tampa, Orlando, Miami, AOC had higher name recognition than any sitting state senator, and a double-digit lead among Latino voters. Then came the move. She bought a condo in Miami, hired a top Florida-based strategist, and started making unannounced appearances at local rallies, union events, and college campuses. She wasn't just teasing a run anymore. She was testing the waters, and they weren't cold. Trump, now a Florida resident himself, reportedly exploded in a private dinner when he saw the headline, "AOC moves into Trump's backyard, and may flip it blue." He knew what it meant. The woman he tried to erase was now planting flags on his home turf. Behind the scenes, both parties went into overdrive. The GOP began laying groundwork for aggressive voter outreach. Meanwhile, national Democrats who once doubted her now scrambled to offer resources, partnerships, and appearances. But AOC remained calculated, silent, strategic. And one tweet pinned to the top of her profile said it all: "They tried to end my story. But maybe I was just the prologue."